Does anxiety sometimes seem to hit you out of nowhere? Or have you ever wondered, why am I feeling anxious now when nothing seems to be going on? Or do you worry about how the anxiety symptoms are affecting you? Today we're diving into an essential part of managing panic and anxiety, learning how it actually works. But before we go deeper, it's important to understand why education about anxiety matters. In the next episode, we'll explore the inner workings of anxiety in more detail. Hello again, I'm Dr. Monica Frank with Excel at Life, and welcome back to another episode of Quieting Anxiety. Some of what we are talking about might feel new or even overwhelming at first, and that's okay. You don't have to grasp everything right away. Just let yourself absorb what makes sense now, and over time, the rest will fall into place. As I've said before, sometimes you might need to listen to these podcasts several times, and that's normal because cognitive therapy is all about repetition. Before we start, let's take a moment to release some tension with a simple stretch. Start by sitting comfortably with your shoulders relaxed. Now gently roll your shoulders up toward your ears, then slowly back and down. Let's do that a couple more times. Up, back, and down. Up, back, and down. Now tilt your head to one side, bringing your ear closer to your shoulder. Don't force it, just enough to feel a gentle stretch along the side of your neck. Hold it there for a breath, and then slowly return to center. Now switch sides. Gentle stretch, hold, and back to center. Now that we've taken a moment to settle in, let's talk about something that might not seem helpful at first: the importance of understanding anxiety. I know some people think, I don't need to understand anxiety, I just want it to go away. And I completely get that. When something feels overwhelming, we just want relief. However, the truth is that understanding anxiety actually gives you more control over it. When you learn how anxiety works, it becomes less mysterious, less intimidating, and ultimately more manageable. Anxiety thrives on uncertainty. So the more you understand it, the less power it has over you. Understanding anxiety is an important initial step in learning how to manage it effectively. When you're struggling with anxiety, it can feel overwhelming, like it controls your thoughts, your body, and even your choices. But the more you learn about what anxiety really is, why it happens, and how it works, the more power you gain to take control back. Knowledge allows you to stop reacting out of fear and begin responding with intention. It helps you make sense of your experience instead of feeling confused or helpless in the face of your symptoms. When it comes to managing anxiety, one of the most important and often overlooked steps is understanding what anxiety actually is. That's why I include so much information in these podcasts, not just techniques, but the why behind them. And this isn't just my opinion. Research consistently shows that the educational component of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, called psychoeducation, is a key factor in reducing anxiety. Psychoeducation involves learning about how anxiety works in your body and mind, why you feel the way you do, what keeps anxiety going, and how the techniques you're learning can interrupt that cycle. This kind of knowledge helps to reduce fear, confusion, and those "what if something's really wrong with me" thoughts. Studies have shown that psychoeducation alone can begin to reduce symptoms of anxiety, and that it helps people stick with CBT and benefit more fully from the process. In fact, people who understand how their thoughts, behaviors, and physical symptoms are connected tend to apply the tools more effectively. For example, people with health anxiety or panic often misinterpret a racing heart or dizziness as something dangerous. But when they learn that these symptoms are just part of the body's normal stress response and not a sign of something life-threatening, it can reduce that fear significantly. In this way, psychoeducation is empowering. It gives you the ability to respond to your symptoms with knowledge rather than fear. And that's why I believe that learning about anxiety is just as important as practicing the techniques to manage it. Many people try to manage anxiety without understanding it, and as a result, they may turn to quick fixes, avoidance, reassurance seeking, or even substances that offer short-term relief but make the anxiety worse in the long run. When you understand how anxiety operates in the mind and body, you begin to recognize these patterns. You learn why avoidance fuels fear, why certain thoughts trigger symptoms, and why your body reacts the way it does. With that understanding, you can begin to apply more effective tools like cognitive behavioral techniques, mindfulness, and relaxation methods that lead to lasting change. I believe one of the most critical effects of anxiety education is how it impacts the perception of threat. To trigger the body's stress response, also known as the fight or flight reaction, the brain must first perceive a threat. That means it's not necessarily the situation itself that causes stress, but how the brain interprets it. The good news is this interpretation isn't fixed. With education and practice, you can change how your brain perceives events, which can significantly reduce your stress and anxiety response. Historically, the stress response served a very important purpose. It helped our ancestors survive real, immediate physical dangers. For example, if a cave dweller encountered a saber-toothed tiger, their body needed to react quickly with increased heart rate, rapid breathing, and heightened alertness, all critical for fighting or fleeing. But in the modern world, most of our threats aren't physical. They're psychological or emotional, and often related to how we interpret everyday situations. Let's say you're stuck on hold with customer service, listening to a cheerful but unhelpful automated system. If you interpret this situation as deliberate obstruction, that the company is purposefully trying to frustrate you or block access to what you need, your body is likely to respond with tension, anger, and anxiety. Why? Because your brain has tagged the situation as a threat. However, when you learn about how anxiety works through psychoeducation, you begin to recognize how this kind of threat is based more on perception than reality. And that gives you an opportunity to reframe the situation. Instead of viewing the call as a personal attack, you might see it as a systems issue or an impersonal process that isn't worth your stress. This change in perception can actually stop or reduce the stress response. In short, psychoeducation gives you the knowledge and awareness to shift your interpretation of situations. And when you change the perceived threat, you change the physiological response. That's a powerful step toward managing anxiety more effectively. Learning about anxiety doesn't mean trying to get rid of it completely. In fact, some level of anxiety is normal and even necessary. It helps keep us alert, safe, and motivated. But when anxiety becomes excessive or interferes with daily life, it's time to learn how to manage it. That starts with education. The more you understand anxiety, the more you'll be able to respond with confidence rather than fear. You'll begin to see anxiety as something you can work with, not something you have to fight against. And that shift in perspective is what opens the door to healing. In the next several podcasts, we'll be talking about the nature of anxiety and panic, what's actually happening in your body, why it feels so overwhelming, and most importantly, how to start breaking free from its grip. For right now, reflect on the question, are you willing to take the time to learn about anxiety before delving into the techniques to manage anxiety? Your current task is to continue to practice the techniques you have already learned. Also, if you began this podcast without listening to the earlier episodes, go back and review them, even if you think they might not be relevant. Okay, let's take a moment to return to that earlier stretching exercise. Take a slow breath and slowly release it. Now, clasp your hands together, reach forward, and let your upper back round slightly as you stretch through your shoulders. Take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, release the stretch. Notice how your body feels, just a little lighter, a little more at ease. In the next episodes, we'll start breaking down how to take back control, step by step. But for now, just remember, you are not powerless against anxiety. The more you understand it, the less power it has over you. Until next time, keep practicing, keep breathing, and keep moving forward.